to the Pathfinder Lair. My name is Drew and I've been a Game Master for over 10 years. On this channel, I help new players understand the rules of the Pathfinder 2nd Edition system. Today in the Lair, I will be covering some tips for all you novice GMs out there as to how to run your games. I will cover some tips you should consider before you even start GMing, and some tips as to how to run your game when it actually starts. First, I will cover what you need to know before you even start. Number 1, make sure you have enough time to prepare for each game session. GMing takes a lot of work and you need to be prepared for each game session. Otherwise, you won't be a good GM and your players might leave. If you're running a module, that means reading the module ahead of time. If you're running homebrew, that means coming up with the story of that session and all the encounters ahead of time. Definitely make sure you're prepared, otherwise you won't be a good GM. And it takes longer than you think it will, so keep that in mind. Number 2, run a module if you're a new GM. A module will have just about everything you need to run a game in its pages. You don't necessarily have to come up with anything ahead of time. It's all right there. Storyline, encounters, everything. Granted, you will still have to come up with some of it, especially if your players go off the rails, but it's still much easier than going homebrew. Much easier. I highly recommend Age of Ashes as a starter module. It's relatively simple to run, and it's a great way to introduce your player to the Pathfinder 2e world. Number 3, make sure you know the rules before you even think about GMing. This does not mean you have to know all the rules. Heck no. I've been GMing for over 10 years and even I have to look up stuff every once in a while. There are far too many rules in any system for one GM to know them all by heart. But you should know the basic ones at least. Like how combat works. And anything that you think your players might use a lot. Plus, as the GM, especially if you have brand new players, they're going to be looking to you for rulings. Sure, you can make your own rules, but you got to be careful about that, especially if you're a new GM. The new rules you make could be completely broken for all you know. Players could exploit it. Plus, if you have new players, they're going to be looking to you on how to build a character. So that's another thing you should know. The more rules you know, the smoother your game is going to go. Number 4, make sure you take a good look at the traits that certain actions have. In the Pathfinder 2nd Edition system, there are traits tied to just about every action that players can take. Like the secret and manipulate traits. I cannot tell you how many times I missed the secret trait on an action when I first started GMing this system. For those of you that don't know, a secret check means that you as the GM will roll this check, adding the player's modifier. And you will not tell them what you rolled. You will simply inform them what happens based on what you rolled. It is often used for things like survival and stealth checks. I still have to look up some of the traits in this system. Number 5, make sure you know how Roll20 or another online gaming system works. With this pandemic going on right now, about 90% of all games are happening online. So you're going to need to learn how to use some kind of online gaming website. Either Roll20 or something else. I use Roll20. It's a great website that's completely free to use, but if you really want to make your life easier, you can buy modules and tokens that you can use right on the site. Although I think most people are probably going to use the free version, because you can just Google tokens and you can just use a snipping tool on the maps in your module. It's really not that hard. But if you need a crash course in Roll20, let me know down in the comments or in the Pathfinder Lair Facebook group. link in the description. I also have the link to Roll20 in the description as well. Now let's talk about what advice I have during actual gameplay. Number 6. If things go wrong with your game, talk to your players. Kill the player's character or use some game mechanic to punish the player that's being difficult. You may have seen this advice online before. Don't listen to it. It is by far the worst advice that you can ever get on any problem you have in the game. Period. If you follow this advice, you might not have any players after a while. If you want to solve a problem in a game, talk to your players. That's the best advice I can give you. It may not even be something they're doing. It may be something that you're doing as a GM and you just don't know about. The best way to deal with a problem will always be talk to your players. If you talk to the player and they're adamant about not changing, there's only one thing you can do, and it's fairly simple. Kick that player out of your game. That's all you can do. Number 7. Make sure you have extras of everything your players need, or hold on to what your players need. We all know that one player who forgets something every time. Plus, players aren't perfect. They will forget stuff every once in a while, even if they're not that guy. Which is why the GM must have extras of everything that their players need. Things like dice are pretty standard, but you may want to have a copy of each player's character sheet as well. And just have them update that character sheet when they're updating their regular character sheets. Just make sure that if you're holding on to your players' character sheets, you don't lose them. Which brings me to my next point. Number 8. Stay organized. When I first started GMing Pathfinder 1, I was not a very organized individual. I had stuff all over the place, and it got to the point where I couldn't find anything I needed when I was trying to prepare for the game. Not to mention during the game. I became organized out of necessity. You will save yourself a ton of grief if you simply just stay organized, so you can find everything you need when you need it. Now I use my computer to organize all my stuff. It makes my games run so much smoother now. Make sure that everyone, including you, is having fun during the game. The entire point of playing any game is to have fun, and this game is no exception. Just because you're the GM doesn't mean that you don't get to have fun too. Most GMs get their kicks out of watching their players react to what they have prepared. Plus, running all the monsters and the NPCs is a lot of work, but it can be really fun as well. Just don't go overboard with this. The point is for everyone to have fun, not just you. Number 10. Think about how your monsters and your NPCs would react to the players, not how you would. This is probably one of the hardest things about GMing. You have to consider all the monsters and NPCs that you're running as characters that you control. This is why it's a good idea to play a character first. That being said, I know that a lot of you might not have that luxury and isn't required to run a good game. It helps, but it's not required. But remember, it's not what you, the GM, would do, it's what your monsters and NPCs would do. You have to think of things from their point of view, not your own. I know that some of you might want to help out your players by having the monster not attack them when they're low on health. That's something you shouldn't do. That's honestly a disservice to the players. The game might not be as fun for them if you do that. This, however, does not mean killing your players' characters. As a GM, it is not your job to kill them. It is your job to give them a challenge. That means almost killing them, not actually killing them though. Or could mean having the monsters use the exact same tactics that the players do. Because if the players came up with it and it's good, why wouldn't the enemies use it? Game mastering is very difficult and is not something you should take lightly. But if you follow the tips in this video, you should be fine. You should follow all these tips, but tip number 1, tip number 3, tip number 6, and tip number 9 are especially important. And remember, you will make mistakes. Comes with the territory. But you will get better session to session. Also, make sure that you ask your players how they think you're doing. They may have tips that I didn't cover in this video for you. And that's going to wrap up this video. If this video helped you and you want to support the creation of more content, go ahead and hit that subscribe button to join the Pathfinder Lair family. Don't forget to check out my 3 Orc Ancestry album videos that came out earlier this week. Next week, I will be continuing that series with the Ratfolk and the Tengu ancestries. So until next time, let's play some Pathfinder. 1, 2, 3, no.